Hello, I'm Tony from Bonner's Music and I'm really excited to announce a brand new instrument from Hammond. And it's an instrument that many people have been waiting for a very long time. So in 2021, Hammond launched the SK Pro range of keyboards, which have been extremely popular with pro keyboard players. But today, Hammond has launched the new SKX Pro, which in some ways could be described as a two-manual version of the SK Pro, but it does have some added features which are really great for live performance. So what I thought I would do is just do a quick overview of the keyboard. If you already play a Hammond instrument, you'll be familiar with some of the things that I'm going to talk about, but you will also see that Hammond has listened to their users, and as a result of this, the SKX Pro has many features that have been requested by the public. I really believe that along with the SK Pro that was launched last year, the new SKX Pro puts Hammond firmly in the arena of professional quality performance keyboards. Not only does the SKX Pro have a really great tone wheel organ sound, which I'm going to play you in a little while, but really good quality, high resolution, other voices such as pianos and synths, and there's some really advanced sound editing and creation features that haven't been seen on a two-manual instrument before. You can also have very advanced external MIDI controls with this as well. So it will be the centerpiece of lots of people's keyboard rigs, whether it's on stage or in a studio or just at home, just to be a really great enthusiast instrument. So first of all, let's just take a look at the panel layout, and then I'm going to play you some of the sounds to give you an indication of what can be achieved. The SKX Pro is very flexible in how it allows you to assign the sounds to different parts of the keyboard. You can even split individual keyboards to give you more than one sound on each manual. There's a lot of features about this instrument that make it very flexible to work just how you need it to work. So no matter what context you're using it in, I'm sure the SKX Pro can be made to suit your specific needs. So let's just start off by having a look at the main panel. We've got two sets of drawbars, and of course you've got separate pedal drawbars as well. So you've got your upper drawbars and your lower drawbars here. Up the top here, there's a new button called Organ Solo. And what Organ Solo does is you can just hit that and it will take you straight back to organ. So it will give you an organ voice on your upper, your lower, and your pedals if you've got pedals attached. Of course, there is a pedal to lower switch as well. So if you don't play pedals, you can bring the pedal voice up onto your lower manual. Next we have here, this is the overdrive knob. So you've got hardware control for overdrive. You don't get that on the SK Pro, you only get that on the SKX Pro, so that's new for the SKX Pro. You've got two separate voice sections. You've got piano and ensemble, and they have their own separate volume controls, and the piano and ensemble voices can be allocated to either the upper or the lower manual, and you can layer them together on the same manual if you want to as well. And it's got to be mentioned that you can actually get to all of the voices no matter which section you've got switched on at any one time. So either section actually has the same amount of voices in it. Even though the panel buttons are marked differently, there is this other button on both sections that allows you to have access to all of the voices. And while I'm talking about voices, if you created any voices on an SK Pro, they are compatible with the SKX Pro. I've done it myself. You can load in sounds from the SK Pro series. So if you're thinking of upgrading from an SK Pro to an SKX Pro, then your voices will work on the SKX Pro. Get in touch with Bonner's, of course, if you want to part exchange your existing instrument. We do take part exchange, so if you have an older Hammond model or perhaps a keyboard from a different manufacturer, it's no problem. We're quite happy to take keyboards in part exchange to enable you to get your hands on a new SKX Pro a little bit quicker. So as we move across to the center here, we've got favorites buttons. So this is where you can store the sounds and patches that you want to use all the time. There are 10 banks of 10, you've got 100 favorites that you can access, which is great for live performance, of course. These four white buttons here in the middle are where you allocate the different voice sections to the different keyboards. So just by pressing them, that switches them on the upper keyboard. If you hold down the lower button and press one of the sections, the light on it turns green, and that means it's allocated to the lower manual. As we move across, we've got controls here for octave up and down. For the individual sections can be shifted up and down in octaves, and also transpose as well, all from the panel. So again, they've really thought about the live performer here. On the far right is the new mono synth, and that's really great for creating your own kind of vintage keyboard sounds. You've got some really great synth leads, but also for creating bass sounds as well. You can allocate the mono synth section to your bass pedals or your lower left hand if you want to, so you can use that to create some really nice fat sort of analog sounding synth bass tones. On the lower left of the keyboard here, you've got your Leslie simulator, fast and slow controls and stop of course, but you can still connect Hammond's CU1 half moon switch to the bottom of the keyboard as well, so it has the holes underneath here for you to screw the CU1 into it. So let's just have a look at some of the sounds and the different sections in a little bit more detail now. So I'm going to start with the organ section, and the organ engine, if you like, with the SKX Pro is actually the same as the XK5. Now that is really the benchmark in digital tone wheel organs. The XK5 is the one that everyone wants to aspire to own, and Hammond have used the same sound generation for the organ section in the SKX Pro that they had in the XK5. So the organ sounds are absolutely fantastic, but it also has a virtual multi-contact system on the keyboard. Now, if you've ever played a vintage Hammond organ, you'll know that when you press the keys very slowly, you would hear the different tone generators come in at slight delayed intervals, and the same is with this. So when you're playing the SKX Pro, it really does feel like you're driving a vintage Hammond organ. So just an example of that, if I just play a note very, very gently, you'll hear the slight delay on the tone generators coming in. Now it's really subtle, but when you're actually playing it, it does feel different to playing a digital organ that doesn't have that feature. Now, Hammond have also vastly improved the digital Leslie simulator, so there's no need now to have an external Leslie simulator. The internal Leslie simulator really does sound fantastic. So just have a listen to, I'll just play a few chords on the organ section just so you can hear. As I said earlier, you can load in individual voices that have been created on the SK Pro range of keyboards, and I know that there are users of SK Pros all over the world that are building up their own sounds, and you can share these across the internet. You can just send someone one sound if you want to. So over time, people are going to start building up huge libraries of their own voices, and you'll be able to share those and load them into your individual keyboard. So just as an example of that, there is a video that I put up just a couple of weeks ago that showed the SK Pro with an organ sound going through the wah-wah effect, and I've loaded that into here. I've got on the floor here, this is the Hammond EXP50J. This is the expression pedal that we recommend and Hammond recommend for the SK and the SKX range of instruments. Now, I've got that controlling the wah effect. So if we just take a listen to this. Now remember that I said that you can put different voice sections on different keyboards. On the bottom here, I've also got a clav with the wah effect on it as well. So there's actually quite powerful effects processors built into the SKX Pro. So the thing that everybody wants to listen to is the piano voice. So what I've got here is just the piano voice on the lower keyboard. So let's just set that there. So to piano on the lower. And this is the sound of the grand piano YCF. So it's actually a sample of a very famous piano manufacturer from Japan, and it's their CF Grand, and it really is a superb sounding grand piano. So I love the sound of the piano in the SKX Pro. Now what I'm going to do is to just turn up the volume on the ensemble section where I've got a synthesizer sound. So I can layer the synth voice with the piano sound. And of course you've got independent volume controls over both the piano section and the ensemble section. Now what I also like is you've got pitch bend and modulation, so if you're playing a synth voice you've got more control now than you've ever had before on an SKX type instrument. And also I can assign, for instance, the sustain pedal or damper pedal as Hammond call it, just to the lower manual. So I can use my foot to hold the voice, but the damper pedal isn't assigned to the upper manual. So I can play some chords in my lower hand. So it gives you great flexibility there to be able to release your hands and play a synth solo, or use it to change some controls whilst that chord is still holding. So the SKX Pro comes loaded with 100 preset combinations, and there are still, as Hammond have always done, put some famous names in there. This one's called Some Lovin', so it's obviously the right setup for playing Gimme Some Lovin', but it's got a really nice kind of overdriven organ sound, but a very bright piano as well. So just as an example. So really great sound, really fantastic. Another example I want to give you here is we've got a split keyboard, but the lower keyboard is split. I have a bass sound in my left hand. I've got the organ in the right hand, that's just on the lower, and then piano on the top. So you can get this kind of effect. So all of the additional voices, so that's the pianos, the strings, the electric pianos, they've all been sampled in very high definition, and the quality of the sounds that are in the SKX Pro really is superb. So here's an example of a Fender Rhodes type sound. You can use the modulation wheel to increase the amount of effect. So on this particular sound, that's the dry sound. You can add tremolo using the modulation wheel, but that modulation wheel can be assigned to any of the digital effects. So just as an example of how that sounds in context. There are still really good classical organ voices as well, so you've got sounds like this. So if you watch some of my other videos which I've created on the SK Pro, all of those sounds and everything that you can do with an SK Pro, you can do with the SKX Pro and more, because you've got a lot more hands-on control. And of course, with two 61-note keyboards, there's a lot more flexibility of where you can assign the different parts to. So finally, I'd just like to show you some of the connections that are on the back of the SKX Pro. So we're going to start off with, on the far left-hand side here, you have the 11-pin Leslie connector. That is now the industry standard Leslie multi-channel connector for all of the latest Leslie rotary speakers. There are separate outputs for each section as well. So if you're working in a recording studio, then you can actually route the piano and ensemble sections out of different outputs to the organ section. There's also a rotary output as well, so anything that goes through the rotary simulator can come out of that output. So Hammond have also included an auxiliary input. It's a mini jack, a 3.5mm stereo jack input, and that allows you to plug in an external music player or your mobile phone or tablet device so that you can play along with backing tracks. So it mixes the sound of the audio in with the main left and right outputs of the SKX Pro. There are two foot switch connectors. One of these can be used for the fast and slow of the Leslie control, or you can use it for switching on and off effects and other various parameters which you can get to in the menus. There's also expression pedal input and of course a damper or sustain pedal input as well. There's MIDI in and out on 5-pin DIN sockets, so that's for use with a MIDI pedal board or connecting to other MIDI equipped gear. And then finally you've got your USB connections. There's USB to device, which is for connecting to a memory stick, so you can store your own settings on there, and there is the to host, so you can connect it to your laptop for recording with a digital audio workstation. So the final thing I'd like to mention is that on the far right hand side of the panel you have a master EQ button, and this gives you hands-on control of the overall EQ of the keyboard. So if you're playing in a live band situation and you're competing with other instruments, then you can use the graphic equalizer to just boost the treble frequencies a little bit if you need to cut through, especially when you've got a guitarist or a bass player or a drummer with you and you just need to try and cut through the mix a bit more. So if you hold down the master EQ button, you can then use the 4 sliders on the far right of the mono synth to alter the shape of the graphic equalizer, and it shows you on the screen the settings for the graphic. So that brings me to the end of my very quick Hammond SKX Pro overview. If you want to purchase one in the UK, you can do that through Bonner's Music. Just follow the links in the description to this video. As I said earlier, we take part exchange, so if you have a keyboard that you want to upgrade to an SKX Pro, send us details of what you've got and we'll get right back to you with a trade-in valuation. So I'd just like to say thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next keyboard demonstration video.